Hi, Stella here. Welcome to my studio. Today, I would like to show you how to digitize your watercolor or even oil painting in case you like to print in the future. So I'm actually going to show you the watercolor process first, but if you'd like to skip ahead to the scanning and digitization processes, just use the timestamp below. I will also be showcasing some of the tools that I will be using, like the brushes, the colors, the gloves, and also my Lenovo pen for editing in iPad. Now let's just talk about what I'm doing. When it comes to watercolor painting, you have to paint it a little bit darker than you normally would for Photoshop to really pick up the values. Now I'm actually using the wet canvas process to create the hair. It literally means that you just apply tons of water onto the paper, you allow the color to run across. I don't know why I love this, but I think this is really the reasons why I work with watercolor, because I love playing with water. And you can use the brush to actually create a striation, which is what I'm doing now, to create the hair strands. Or, you can apply less amount of water and you dab it in a darker color to create accents of edge lines. Like for instance, over here, the shadows between the leaves and also your neckline of this face. Or sometimes I don't even use water first. I just apply the ink directly onto a slightly damp paper. Then now you can see I diluted the ink with water, and I use a much finer brush, and I think this is the King's Art brush. Just check out my description below if you're interested to buy it. And my goal is to build up a very natural, what I call a texture-free lips, because lips are like the second favorite thing I love painting. Now I'm applying a much pigmented ochre. Then I use the blending brush with lots of water to kind of create a blushy feel across her nose ridge, like that. And as you can see, I don't even dry up the excess water. I just let it sit there because it will actually dilute the ink a bit more, so it's really like that. Like, it's really, really blushy. I love this brush so much. It has a round head. Now I just switched the brush to a more pointed head and just really creating the dimension around her eye, her pupils, really creating the fold, the lid, and the different muscle tones. If you never worked with watercolor before, obviously the difference, compare this to an oil painting technique, is that water dries, and when it dries, it does different thing to the ink, and how the ink will actually, the ink or the paint, however you want to call it, will actually reveal itself on the paper, will interact with the paper. It's not for everybody, because you had to literally rush against time if you're looking for a very specific interaction between the water before it actually completely dries up. So I don't mind it. I just play with it. To me, like, painting is playing. It's really not trying to impress anybody. It's just my own personal process. Now I'm using very pigmented red ochre around the eye socket area. I noticed that this actually may be a very Asian technique, because I hardly ever see, Western artists do this using such a pigmented red, unless it's like part of the subject's, makeup eyeshadow. But usually they don't really use that type of red to, accent the muscle tones, the crease around the eye or the lips. Oh, well, actually, no, they do that with the lips. As you can see, you should know just by watching this, painting the eye is my absolute favorite thing. I would rush through all other anatomies, but never the eye, and I'll just go at it nonstop. And adding layers upon layers of textures and waters. I think I just pluralized water, which I shouldn't have, so my apology. Yeah. Some people were like, oh, your work is very fantastical. I say yes. It's not exactly like realistic. It's not. There's a, obviously if you look at it in proportion to the rest of her face, you know, her eye is exaggerated. You know, it is bigger than the rest of her features. Now I'm finally using the tissue, and all you had to do is dab, dab, dab. And the reason why I'm using the tissue is because, did you see that kind of grainy texture? I'm trying to use that. So I'm drying the paper and then kind of like breaking the fiber of the paper so you can actually see and feel see and feel the paper fiber being slightly kind of like, you know, I don't want to use this, they are wiped off, you know, broken up by the tissue paper. I just can't leave the eye alone. I do apologize. Again, timestamp below if you want to skip directly to the scanning and digitization process. I will not blame you because the eye is gonna take me a while. Now I'm creating the crease. Okay, fine. I skipped ahead. I'm doing the flower. I'm using two different types of metallic paint. They're both listed down below in the description box, so just go and take a look. Some people like the metallic paint very opaque. I don't. Well, at least for this particular painting, I don't, because I do want the flowers to pop and be very saturated, because technically her face is kind of hiding behind the two flowers anyways. So I'm really building up the paint one layer at a time and just keep going back at it. And I also had to take like a couple minutes break. I use an Epson Perfection Fix 600 photo scanner. It's probably one of the best scanners I've ever used, and it's just a little bit over $200 when I bought it. According to their website, their technology is patented. It's also able to scan at 1200 dpi, which basically you can print as large as 4 by 6 feet. But for our purpose, let's do 800. You can also do picture adjustment, mid-tone, contrast, saturation. I always tell people, you know, adjust accordingly. I like to scan completely raw, just because it retains the original color value, easier for me to edit in Photoshop. Now let's open it up in Photoshop. The first thing I do is I need to actually crop this into the size, the print size I want, and also rotate it slightly, because when I was scanning it, it was a little bit skewed. So just give it a moment. Now we're actually gonna do further adjustment. So this is actually a relative number. You can't really print like that and find a frame that will fit. So what I would do is that I will manually change it to a size I like, and this time I didn't bound it because it was such a slight difference. Curve level exposure are the most important tools for color correction and adjusting your image. They're under image adjustments. You'll find all of it. Let's start with curves. What it does is that it actually changes the overall image in light and shadow. As you can see, you can make it overexposed or underexposed. You can select any point on the actual curve line itself and start creating the contrast that you're looking for. For our purpose, we're gonna end it right here. Now, the next thing that I use all the time is actually levels. So what levels do is that you can actually target, let's say, the midtone, the shadow, and the highlight, and then you can really start to slide it across the spectrum to see where do you want the value to be at. It's actually a pretty amazing tool. I use it almost every single time. Do you use curve and level at the same time? It really depends on what you're looking for. Yes and no. I also sometimes use exposure. If you're a photographer, you know exactly what exposure is. It's kind of like a film, you overexpose or underexpose your entire image. You can also offset it, which is literally heightening certain details, not the entire, well, it is the entire image, but only certain like edges and lines. You can also do gamma correction. I usually don't touch that. Now, assign profile. This is really prepping for your file to be printable by printers. For the most part, majority of the printers nowadays, they require Adobe RGB 1990 a profile setting. So you can come to this drop down menu, you can find it, it's usually the first one, or you can go select the second. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's preset, so just select that and click OK. Next thing we do is that we actually need to save this file in the Photoshop format PSD to retain everything, all the layers, all the color information, all the file information necessary, so then you can always come back and do more editing. So change it from TIFF to Photoshop. Adjustment, hue, saturation. So if you are lazy, and it happens, like you wanted to change it everything all at once in a combo move, that's what I call it if you're a gamer, or you can desaturate it. This is pretty much the tool that you use. It's very rare I use it though, I have to be honest with you, just because I paint in the color I want anyways, but it does happen. Now, color balance is you can target very specific color in, let's say, a specific midtone, highlight, or shadow spectrum. And look, I can make it a little bit warmer by adding more red. In fact, that was what I ended up doing for this particular painting, because I wanted to sell it to consumers, who would buy art prints online. And from my past experience, I noticed that majority of my prints that sell better usually have a warmer tone. And here's a fun thing, certain galleries, they prefer cooler tones, so this is the reason why being able to kind of post edit your artwork is so important. Okay, black and white. Look, if for whatever reason you want to change it completely to black and white, you can do saturation, or you can literally just go to image adjustment, black and white, and there we go. Final cleaning. This is so freaking important. Remember how I was saying that the Epson Phi 600 scanner is a really good scanner? Look at all the blemishes that it's picking up. Some of them I can't even see it in person, in real life. But if you zoom in, and here's a tip, always zoom in 200 to 400%. That's really when you will start picking up all the dirt. I think that's like a dirt spot, maybe like one of my eraser residue. And even like pet hairs, if you have pets like me. I got 3 cats in my studio. I've been trying to get rid of them, but I just can't because I feel bad. See, that's a little pet hair that I had to actually clean it up. So I'm actually using the clone tool right now, and I usually like to stick to a smooth, soft edge so the blending looks more natural. But for certain lines and certain angles, I will switch to a hard edge edge. And honestly, it's just really up to what you're looking for. So again, you gotta pick everything up at a totally zoomed angle so you can see everything. My rule of thumb has always been, if it's arguable, like if an art collector or a curator will look at it and say, okay, what is that? You need to fix it. Even if it's part of the artwork, like it could be a splash mark, literally from your watercolor splashing across the page, or it could be the metallic gold dusts. If it's arguable, then fix it, clone it out, use a healing brush it out. You don't want to waste your time to argue with people over something as minute as this, especially when you decide to print this massively big. Basically anything bigger than, let's say, 24 by 32, you will see these like blemishes really clearly, so don't do that to yourself.
I don't know if you guys noticed, I'm not actually fast forwarding this process because as you may have noticed by now, it's actually a very labor intensive, arduous process. The way I like to do it is that I just keep zooming in, zooming out, zooming in, zooming out to catch every single little defect that I could possibly find. And sometimes you do have to use your best judgment. Like for instance, these are actually little metallic gold dusts just like spread across on the page. To some people they may look like blemishes, but I know it's not. So then as an artist, you have to make the executive decision. Do I clean it? Do I not? I clean out the ones that I feel like people will argue against it. I keep the ones that that look more seamless as part of the painting. And you literally scan across the page 1 inch at a time at 200 or 400% zoomed in. That's the only way for you to pick up on everything. And we just keep on scanning. Ooh, look at the metallic gold dusts. This scanner is so good. I'm literally saving up money to buy a bigger scan bed. I'm sorry, I keep saying printer for some reason. Now this is the final work. I made it a lot warmer because I want to sell online directly to art print lovers. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. So maybe I'll make more videos and show you guys how to do things. Ciao, see you at my next video.